Now return to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. There's that old familiar feeling again. The crushing pressure of this historic courthouse. Actually, no, it's a little different today. There's an even more menacing tension in the air. There is a menacing tension in the air here today, isn't there? I suppose. Yes, I think so. It can only be the result of the menacing appearance of the defendant. A little more courtesy, if you please. Oh my, I do apologize. However, you're certainly not mistaken that this trial is far from ordinary. What do you mean? I'm not privy to the details, however, I understand that no jury has been selected. A trial without a jury? Well, that's just like the trial of the professor 10 years ago. Closed court. Good morning, my dear fellows. Mr. Sholmes. You made note of my hair, Mr. Naruhodo. An outright victory for science, you must agree. To be perfectly honest, so much happened yesterday that, well, I completely forgot about your little hair problem. Ah, what to one man is a little hair problem, is to another a day of drinking dubious potion after dubious potion. You have no idea how my stomach ails me this morning. Oh dear, how awful for you. I'm afraid you only have yourself to blame, Mr. Sholmes. Good morning to you, Mr. Reaper. I'm delighted to see you looking so full of vim. And I, you. I see London celebrated great detective is as active as ever. Now you exaggerate, my dear fellow. Compared to my paltry engagements with a few trivial cases, the Reaper's overbearing presence is a far greater deterrent to the black roots of crime in our capital. And whilst I may not agree with your methods, there is at least one point on which I would readily commend you. What an honor, and that would be your eye for a good lawyer, sir. Mr. Sholmes, after all, behind this lawyer there is a very great mind, my own. What are you trying to say? I wish only to say that you should be prepared for quite a trial, Mr. Reaper. Sorry to barge in. Oh, it's different people. I thought it was the bailiff. Gina. What's that on her arm? It's a mourning band, I suppose. Father, shouldn't you be at the symposium? It's been postponed, so I have some free time. I decided to come along with the police inspector to see our country's up-and-coming student in action. I shall be very interested to see the fruits of your studies over the past year. Well, it's an honor to have you here. Let's hope there's some fruits to see. Odo? Oh, yes, Gina. Won't you agree to this, eh? Won't you take him on? Take him on? There's the reflection on there. It's Reaper bloke. Everyone says it was him what killed the boss. I'm sorry, Gina, but I just don't believe that. Well, if it weren't him, who were it? I don't know that yet. I don't care who calls him what. The Reaper's just a name. He's just a person in the end of the day. And if it turns out it was him what killed the boss, then God help him. Fiery eyes indeed. Yes, the culprit deserves every ounce of your loathing. Eh? At least that may be some solace to the deceased. Please, Odo. Get whoever did this. For the boss. Oh, Gina. Well, I ain't feeling this useless, but there's nothing I can do. You've gotta help find who done this and make the wretch pay. Counsel for the defense and the defendant. Court will be in session shortly. Make your way into the courtroom at once, please. Alright, here we go. It's time, Mr. Naruhodo. Lord Van Zeeks? One who lost his treasured brother to a mass murderer. One who lost his treasured father in a foreign court of law. And one who lost the man who helped her escape destitution. All that misfortune, all that pain, on course to collide headlong in this trial. It's time to shine a light on all these dark events. Whatever truth is revealed, we're going to have to look it straight in the eye.
In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session. We are here to conduct the fair and just trial of the defendant, Beric Van Zeeks. Counsels for the defense and prosecution, are you ready to begin?
The defense is ready, my lord. The prosecution is more than ready. Oh, Kazuma-sama. I've been wishing to see you in court again for so long, it feels... But I never pictured it happening like this. I never thought I'd be facing you behind the prosecution's bench.
The so-called Reaper of the Bailey has been a scourge like no other, undermining Her Majesty's justice system. Today we must uncover the truth behind this scourge.
In other words, this trial is going to be a lot more far-reaching than Inspector Gregson's murder.
The truths revealed by these proceedings may have unpredictable repercussions through the judiciary. Accordingly, they are to be conducted as a closed trial with no members of the public present, by Her Majesty's direct orders.
How will that work, my lord?
The burden of all arbitration and adjudication falls on my shoulders. Therefore, as you will see, the juror's bench shall remain vacant today.
What are all those people up in the gallery then if this is a closed court? If no members of the public are present, might I ask who is currently occupying the gallery, my lord?
Stuffed dummies. They are members of the judiciary, here to witness proceedings and ensure an equitable trial.
Members of the judiciary. My, this is a very unusual trial already.
There is, of course, another unprecedented aspect to these proceedings on which I must elaborate. The counsels for the prosecution and the defense are both aliens of Great Britain.
I believe it takes an outsider to see the truth sometimes. And as I stand here in this courtroom now, I'm quite certain. This is the reason why I had to come to Britain. Kazuma?
Very well, let us commence proceedings. Prosecutor Osugi, your opening statement, if you please.
Certainly, my lord. The incident took place on the 1st of November, at just after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The location was a building of flats on Fresno Street on the outskirts of the city. The victim's body was discovered there in an old single-room rental property.
Yes, Inspector Tobias Gregson, a name known very well indeed to this court. Not least for his miraculous resolution of one of this country's grimmest cases 10 years ago.
Professor Case, how sure are you about the time of the incident? Several witnesses on the street outside heard the gunshot, and all have reported the same. Yes, that's what Gina told us too. There were a number of witnesses. I have here a plan of the room. The victim was found curled up in one corner. It's believed that he was shot from the front at point-blank range and died instantly.
How has the range been determined?
There were scorch marks around the entry wound. Such marks are caused by the gunpowder used to fire the bullet. The powder hot enough to leave scorch marks is only ejected a few inches beyond the end of the barrel. In other words, It only happens when the target is at point-blank range.
I see, yes. Thank you for the detailed explanation, Counsel.
The murder weapon was found lying beside the victim.
And have you managed to ascertain the owner of this firearm?
No, my lord. Not conclusively. Bravo, Kazuma-sama. Not trying to use the gun as evidence when its provenance can't be proven. Furthermore, my lord, as I've explained, the revolver was fired at extremely close range. The bullet passed through the victim and struck the wall behind him. There's a candelabrum mounted on that wall, and the tip of one of the candles in it was found to have been blown off by the projectile. We noticed that too, didn't we? Yes, that's right.
Thank you for the thorough report, Counsel. The setting of the crime is clear to me. You will submit the plan of the crime scene as evidence, please.
As you wish, my lord. The crime scene floor plan's been entered into the court record.
Is this Fresno Street room Inspector Gregson's private abode?
No, my lord. The room is rented to a Mr. Hugh Boone. And there is precious little furniture inside, and it is generally in a poor state of repair. So what on earth was Gregson even doing there? Presumably he was investigating some case or other. When a policeman was informed of the gunshot from the witnesses and rushed to the scene, he found only the deceased inspector and the accused standing alongside, holding the revolver. The attending officer arrested the accused on the spot.
So the details of the case are clear.
In that case, the prosecution would like to call its first witness.
A name, please, Counsel.
Naturally. The accused himself. Lord Van Zeeks? I mean, why are you surprised by this, obviously? As a prosecutor, he believes in the oath of office he's taken, and will be compelled to tell the truth.
Very well. Let the defendant take the witness stand.
So, witness, state your name and occupation for the court. Eric Van Zeeks, Old Bailey prosecutor.
I presume, Lord Van Zeeks, that you heard Prosecutor Asogi's opening précis.
I did.
It is alleged that you were found at the scene of the crime, and that you were arrested by the arriving police officer. Can you confirm this?
Yes, my lord. And I'm sure the court would like to hear you explain some things away. Namely, why you were there in the room on Fresno Street at the time in question, and what exactly took place. I intend to explain away nothing. I will simply tell the truth.
I must say, Lord Van Zeeks, I never imagined this day would come. Or rather, I didn't want to imagine it would come. But since you became known as the Reaper, a part of me has been dreading it. Your formal testimony then, witness.
I was investigating Gregson, and my inquiries had led me to that address. When I first entered the room that day, it was dark inside and I saw no one. A moment later, I heard the gunshot. I spun around and saw the revolver on the floor. Just as I picked up the firearm to examine it, the door flew open and I heard a man scream. It was only then that the body of the Inspector Gregson appeared before me. That testimony was the whole truth? It was. So, you heard a shot being fired in a room with no living occupants, and moments later, a corpse somehow appeared before your eyes, is that it? You're right, you haven't explained away anything. In fact, that would barely qualify as an excuse. I thought you were my mute apprentice. Yet it turns out you have your way with words, Prosecutor Asogi.
It would appear to be a singular tale indeed.
Singular isn't the word, it's laughable. What's got into Kazuma? He's not behaving like himself at all.
Very well, then. Counsel, you may begin your cross-examination.
Yes, my lord. Getting Gregson, nada. Why were you there? You were investigating the inspector? What on earth for? I'm not at liberty to say. Sorry? I'd identified a distinct possibility that Gregson was involved in a case I was investigating. Regrettably, though, he was killed before I could secure the proof I needed.
Is the court to understand, then, that on the day in question you followed the victim to the scene?
No, I was privy to his movements in advance. How? I stole into his office in the yard and consulted his diary. The address on Fresno Street was noted in the 5 p.m. entry. You illegally entered the man's office? In Japan, that alone would constitute a very serious offense.
As it does in Great Britain, I assure you. Is that not the case, Lord Van Zeeks?
I was aware of the possible consequences. So, in summary, you were investigating the victim, and yet, you refused to tell the court why. I didn't realize British prosecutors enjoyed such freedom to choose what to divulge under oath. Why did I ever think I could defend this man? Entered the room, it was dark, and I saw no one. Had you ever been to the address before? No, never. I only learnt of the place as a result of my investigations into Gregson's activities. There was no light inside when I entered, so it was all but impossible to make out anything. But at 5 p.m. the sun would only just have gone down. It would still have been reasonably light outside. The room has a window, but it was boarded shut. Very little light found its way into the room from outside, so it was extremely murky inside. I wouldn't have noticed if the victim was already lying on the floor. There was no artificial light in the room, you say? You're quite sure? I'm quite sure that the part of the room where the body was found was very dark. I have a feeling there was a small oil lamp burning on the desk, though I couldn't say for sure. Look, Mr. Naruhodo. There is a small desk in the room, just here. Yes, I remember. And there was an oil lamp on it, as well as the framed photograph. When I entered the room, I closed the door behind me and I started towards the desk to investigate. And what did you find? Nothing. I never actually reached the desk. A moment later, I heard a gunshot spun around and the revolver's on the floor. So who fired the gun? I have no idea. I didn't see anybody else in the room. But you say it was very dark in there. Yes, that's right. All I can tell you is I didn't sense another's presence. Then could it be that the gunshot actually originated from somewhere outside the room? No, that's out of the question. Oh. Without doubt, the sound emanated from inside the room. I could smell the gunpowder. This is going from bad to worse. And you say that's the point at which you noticed the revolver on the floor? Correct, and I foolishly picked it up. It was carelessness on my part.
Presumably then the gunshot you heard came from the firearm that you somewhat hastily took in your hands.
In point of fact, my lord, I believe it did not. What? The barrel of the revolver I picked up was cold, and there was no smell of spent powder. But then, where on earth is the gun that was fired? Whilst I would like to oblige you with an answer, I'm afraid I can't. I too would dearly like to know that. Just as I picked up the firearm to examine it, the door flew open. A man, you say? One of the witnesses, I presume? That's right. One of the street merchants working on Fresno Street.
Who are these merchants?
A number of them had set up their stalls directly beneath the boarded window of the crime scene. a match seller, a newsmonger, and a peddler. They've all given statements saying they heard the gunshot, and without thought of danger, they ran inside to see what had happened. Yes, Gina told us about that yesterday, didn't she? They burst through the door with some force, it would seem. They did, and almost gave me a heart attack in the process. But you're supposed to be the Reaper. The first man to come in immediately noticed the revolver in my hand and fled. A policeman patrolling on Fresno Street heard the commotion and was able to arrest the accused shortly after the incident occurred. Anyway, the man's scream drew my attention in that direction. Only then the body of the inspector appeared before me. What do you mean by that? In what way did the body appear? I honestly can't explain it, but it's the truth. As far as I was concerned, the body hadn't been there until that point, and then suddenly, there it was. Did you perhaps hear the sound of the victim falling to the ground just beforehand? At that moment, what I heard was the sound of the door flying open and the scream of the man who came inside first. Nothing more. I see. After the man fled, I examined the body. I was stunned to find that it was Gregson.
Most curious circumstances indeed.
How the inspector was killed, or how his body seemed to appear out of nowhere, I have no idea.
Objection!
Surely the court has heard enough. My lord, the cross-examination has clearly revealed that the accused, Barak Van Zieks, is lying on multiple fronts. What is that supposed to mean?
Good gracious, counsel. The defendant is lying, you say?
In his testimony just now, he claims that he failed to notice the victim's body because the room was dark. That's correct. No, that's impossible. As proven by this candelabrum. How does that prove anything? If you examine the tip of the long candle, you can see it has been blown off by a powerful impact.
One would assume that the projectile from the firearm passed through the victim and struck the candle.
The problem comes when you consider the other two candles, which are clearly of a different length.
Yes, I can see that only the candle that appears to have been struck by the bullet is long.
We could reasonably expect someone to have lit all three candles together, which begs the question of why only one has ended up longer than the others. That must be because that particular candle was extinguished when the others were still burning. Ah. That's right. When the candle was hit by the bullet, it obviously went out. But the other two candles would still have been burning, so the fact is, the victim's body would have been illuminated by the light still thrown by the candelabrum, and the accused's claim that he couldn't see the body clearly contradicts those facts. And now to the next lie. There's more? The accused also claims never to have visited the scene of the crime before. That's the truth. In that almost empty room, the police discovered something very unusual. A board covered from top to bottom in police documents and newspaper cuttings. Yes, that's right. We saw it too. It goes without saying that the contents of the police documents cannot be divulged. However, they included a number of reports from various historical cases, the oldest of which was from 10 years ago. 10 years ago? This is starting to sound familiar. And there is a common thread linking all of the documents on that board.
Indeed. What is this common thread, counsel?
They all relate to cases prosecuted in court by Barak Van Zieks. All of them? And furthermore, all those cases are ones in which the defendant was acquitted.
Good lord.
Interestingly, none of those defendants are alive today, because all of them have been sent to their graves by the Reaper. Oh no. In short, that dingy little room is the Reaper's secret hideout, and his base of operations. The Reaper's hideout? And yet the Reaper would claim never to have been to his own secret hideout? No one would believe that. No, the truth is, we've been looking at this backwards.
Backwards? Explain, Counsel.
Inspector Gregson was investigating the identity of the Reaper. When he discovered the location of the man's secret hideout, he was killed. As I'm sure everyone can imagine, by the Reaper's hand. Nani?
Order! Very well, I hereby state the current opinion of the court. Barak van Zieks is an outstanding prosecutor who has rendered great service to this country. However, it is with deep regret that I must concur with Prosecutor Asogi's contention that the defendant's testimony exhibits a number of stark inconsistencies with the known facts.
What I have done is state the truth as I know it. Kazuma has done a brilliant job as ever. He's drawing on his experience as a defense attorney to build his prosecution case, and it's formidable.
Counsel, I will submit the board that you just showed the court as evidence. I believe it to be fundamental in establishing the facts surrounding the Reaper's existence.
Thank you, my lord. Notice the board has been entered into the court record. And now the prosecution would like to call new witnesses to the stand. Before you do that, let's check out the evidence. There are details of a whole raft of cases dating back years on here, aren't there? This paper from 10 years ago is browning with age, look. Out of interest, the most recent thing appears to be this newspaper cutting here. Oh, it's the same Red-Headed League advertisement that Mr. Sholmes had picked out. And do you remember there was a red hairpiece at that scene too? Was Inspector Gregson an exponent of the Red-Headed League then? Oh, what's this? Mr. Naruhodo, look! Oh yes, it's a smudge of some kind. In fact, it looks just like a handprint. And the color, it's blood, isn't it? Oh dear, how disturbing. Okay, I'm sure that will come into play later. And then this is just the room. Witnesses who saw events unfold on the day in question. They were mentioned in the previous testimony too, if you remember. Yes, the street sellers who heard the gunshot and went running into the room.
Well, lead the witnesses in. The defendant may step down from the witness stand.
Certainly, my lord. I've seen that guy before. So, witnesses, state your names and occupations for the court. Names? We don't use names. Far too fancy for the likes of us. We're just free and easy. Sell what we like, live where we want to live. I give them all a vacant stare as they walk down Fresno and spin a few words into a verse for them.
Would I be right in assuming that all three of you make your living by selling wares on the street?
Everyone calls me gossip. I sell jaunty little tidbits to passers-by, you know. I said jaunty little tidbits. You've got an absolute smatter for you, sir. Right up your general, it is. 6p is the price and not a penny less. Wait, you're actually trying to sell it to me now? Oh, come on, sir. Don't tell me you're not interested. Interested? God, this is hard. Try the man. Give him the money and see what it is.
Pay the man, counsel.
Alright, 6p it is. You won't regret it, sir. Oh, got your listening ears on. Just between us, a young couple on Flight Street had just had twins. Is that it?
No, that's not it. It's gossip, isn't it? It wants to spread, but that bit's up to you and your mouth, of course. I've got more, you know. Want another juicy one? 6 pence a piece it is, if you're curious.
I am curious, yes, about what's going on just under that fat bottom lip of yours. Namely, that unusual bruise or whatever it is that's poking out from under your collar. What about the next witness, then? What name do you go by, and what do you sell?
Me? I'm Venus. That's what everyone calls me. Funny, isn't it? I sell these lovely little fireworks to all the local school kids. 6 pence a pop. What do you say?
You weren't exaggerating with little. Do they actually sell?
Oh, yeah. The second years can't get enough of my Venus firecrackers. Especially when I tell them that if they get 100, they could blow up the school.
Not the most savoury of ideas, young lady.
What do you say then, eh? I'll part with 6 pence for a pop.
What? You want me to buy one?
Tell you what, I'll let you in on a little secret. If you get 100 of them, you could blow up the whole courtroom.
Try the woman.
Give her the money and see if she's right.
Pay the woman, counsel.
All right, I'll buy one.
Lovely stuff. Right then, this is something a bit extra just for you. The Venus Special. Only 600 pence.
600?
It's 100 for my regular fireworks. Nothing little about that, is there?
And there'd be nothing little about the punishment if I blew up the Old Bailey, either. Venus Firecracker's been entered into the court record. What sort of bang could it make? And the last witness. What name do you go by, and what do you sell?
I'm a thinker, mate. I think all sorts of thoughts. I think, therefore I am. I am, therefore I think. I think. Because I stand there in the street, or watching the world go on about me, they call me the observator. Get out of it, old man. Everyone calls you Sandwich, and you know it.
So you don't actually sell anything?
A problem shared is a problem halved, as they say. I give advice, I do, and and think what it means.
Oh, this one's hard.
I don't actually sell anything, no, come to think of it.
Pity. No more purchases today, please.
Well, we have quite a cast here, it seems.
They conduct their business on Fresno Street from morning until night, my lord, and always in the same place, directly adjacent to the crime scene.
I see, and thus they heard the gunshot, I suppose.
Not only that, but they very bravely ran inside to see what was going on and witnessed the crime.
We'll all be beggars, I thought, just between us.
Venus de Milo, what am I to do? What a terrible thing I saw.
What I think is, if all what we see is light and shadow playing with our eyes, is any of it real?
Very well. Court will hear the formal testimony of these three witnesses now. In all of their very difficult, unique voices, we will describe the detail that you witnessed and heard at the time of the incident.
You saw the whole thing from start.
Well, I'm choking on my own tongue now.
From start to finish, we did. Everything from the moment we went in the building.
It was less than a minute after Reaper had gone inside that we all heard a big bang.
It seems to me that the quick to talk is quick to walk. Gossip couldn't wait to go and see what had happened. I ran into the room and there he was, the Reaper, gun in hand, standing over the dead body.
I was scared half to death, me, so I ran off to find a copper.
If these witnesses were there the whole day and saw everything, Who did they see going inside the building? Only the victim, Inspector Gregson, and the accused, Barrick Van Zeeks.
I've seen pictures of that Reaper in the paper. I know what he looks like. And just between us, folk love stories like this. I've made myself a tidy sum already.
But wait, the room was just one of several flats in the building. Someone from another flat could have done it. All those flats on Fresno Street are unoccupied.
Of course they are. They're small, damp, dirty, and expensive to boot.
The room in which the inspector was found is the only property in the building that's currently leased. And we know the leaseholder's name, don't we? It's Hugh Boone.
The testimony the court has just heard would appear to leave little room for doubt. It's becoming increasingly difficult to see how anyone other than the defendant could have committed the crime.
No. Thank you for your candor, my lord.
Counsel for the defense, you may proceed to cross-examine the witnesses.
Yes, my lord. In a closed court like this, without a jury, the judge is the only person whose opinion matters. I have to break down this testimony. Somehow. I suppose we should probably look at the firecrackers we were just given before we go doing this. Have you had an idea, Mr. Naruhodo? You're staring at the end of the string of fireworks. Sorry, it's just that it's the Venus special. I was wondering what 600 pence worth of fireworks would sound like. Shall we find out? What? But she said it could blow up the courtroom. All right, that was a fairly sizable bang. My ears are still ringing, Mr. Naruhodo. It sounded almost exactly like a gunshot. Thing is, though, with that many of them, it wouldn't just sound like a gunshot, it would sound like a lot of gunshots. So either the visual is misleading or whatever. So the whole thing from start to finish.
Hold it!
When you say they, who do you mean exactly? Inspector Gregson and the defendant, Lord Van Zeeks?
I suppose so. The likes of us, wouldn't know the names of the high and mighty. But I'll tell you one thing. It was the old Reaper that went in last. That's for sure and certain.
Just behind Inspector Gregson. Did they arrive at the same time as each other?
No, not at all. The first fella must have gone inside a good 15 minutes before he heard that gunshot.
The victim arrived 15 minutes before? Are you sure about that?
Am I sure? Does it seem likely that I'd have forgotten a fellow with bright red hair like that, does it? Yeah, his hair really were red, weren't it? Redder than my flaming fireworks, even. That fiery red moth still burnt on the inside of my eyelids, it is.
Wait a minute. You're saying the man was a redhead?
Weren't you listening, chum? Aye, he was a redhead, and he had a big trunk with him as well.
But Inspector Gregson's hair isn't red, not by any stretch of the imagination. It seems likely the person you saw wasn't in fact Inspector Gregson at all, but some other third party. No, I hate to break it to you, but the witnesses are correct. What? Just have a look at this photograph of the victim taken at the scene. Yes, that's Inspector Gregson, all right. And a red hairpiece. Ah, of course. We saw one on the floor when we were investigating the scene, didn't we? I still refuse to believe Inspector Gregson wore a hairpiece, though. So then why on earth would he have been wearing something like that?
The color does seem to suit the man, one might say. Photograph will be submitted as evidence, please, counsel.
Photograph. has been entered in the court record. And what became of the trunk that the red-headed victim was supposedly carrying? I was informed that no trunk was found at the scene. So it just disappeared?
What, do you expect us to have been watching the building every second, do you? We definitely saw him in the dock going in, though. No question about that.
It was less than a minute after the Reaper got inside, we all heard a big bang.
By which presumably you mean the gunshot.
I sell these little things, don't I? How would I know what a gunshot sounds like? But I've always thought it probably sounds a bit like this, doesn't it?
And you say that you heard the noise almost as soon as you saw the defendant here enter the building.
That's right. It was almost straight away. Bang, it went just like that. Well, he's a Reaper, isn't he? Indeed. It's what the French call a fait accompli. When the Reaper's round, people are going into the ground. I mean, that's what he does, isn't it? Ain't it?
I think we get the message. The Reaper couldn't allow the inspector to live after he'd discovered his secret hideout. There can be no clearer motive for the crime.
Yes, it's certainly an eminently credible motive.
Great. And at that point, you ran inside, is that correct?
It seems to be a quick talk, a quick walk. Okay, press.
So, when Gossip ran to see what had happened, did you go too?
Well, me, I'm a bit hampered, see? All the signs are that I can't move very well.
You were away behind, presumably, with that sandwich board around your neck and that big sign in your hand. Criminy, this gets harder all the time. What a great burden you bear. Pardon me for asking, Mr. Sandwich, but is it possible you and I have met before?
No, I'm not anybody, me. The sign, what makes me who I am now. I sign, therefore I am.
So you weren't employed as an omnibus driver just under a year ago, then? I might be mistaken, but I believe his trembling has intensified, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, I agree. He's clearly been through a lot.
Down King Henry Street, and the Black Widower's Arms is just there.
Oh dear, you've made him hide behind his sign. Life is full of surprises. To the room, and there he was.
Hold it!
So then you were the first person to arrive on the scene, is that right?
That I was. Kicked the door open like a professional, I did, and then yelled out, "What's going on here?"
Lord Van Zieks claimed all he heard was a man scream, though. And it was dark inside the room.
No, not dark at all. There were candles burning on the wall.
Really?
And there was a fella collapsed on the floor. Just between us, it's the first thing I noticed when I got inside.
Ah, I see. Even though Lord Van Zieks claims not to have seen any such lights on the wall.
The next thing I noticed was someone standing right beside the body.
The accused, Beric Van Zieks.
That's right, the pale-faced Reaper himself. I was a little shocked, I wouldn't deny. I won't deny it, but I'm no lily-livered coward. I stood my ground and gave that Reaper a cold hard stare myself.
Excuse me.
Do you have something to add, Mr. Sandwich?
There's really nothing to it. Me, empty in the head I am. Just 2 slices with no middle. So I don't know what you could want with me.
He's really hard to read and try and do the voice at the same time. I think that maybe you just remembered something? Having heard Mr. Gossip's last statement, I mean.
What I think is, we're all nothings, really. We try to dress ourselves up as something else, but at the end of the day, we're all just street sellers. That's enough out of you, Sandwich. Keep your trap shut now. Unless you want us to make you into a real sandwich. When we saw the Reaper, he fell clean over on his backside. That's it? Oh, you rotten beggar. I told you to keep that a secret. He screamed, he did. Screamed and scrabbled off on all fours. That's what I wanted to say.
Mr. Gossip, is this true?
The floor was dead slippery, that's why. Planted my hand in a filthy pool of blood, didn't I? Yuck.
What? A pool of blood?
Well, listen here. Even when I was sprawled on the floor, I still kept giving that Reaper a cold hard stare, and don't you forget it.
Let's just go back a little. Did you say you got your blood on your hand?
I did, I. It happens to the best of us at times, don't it? So I was scared, so I slipped over. We can keep it just between us, can't we?
No, Mr. Gossip. I'm going to have to ask you to add that information to your formal testimony.
Oh, if I must.
The witness will amend his testimony to include the aforementioned details at once.
I slipped over and got blood on my hands, so I quickly wiped it off on the floor. I wiped it off on the floor.
Hold it!
Wiped it off on the floor.
Oh, shit. I skipped over that one.
Well, who wants blood?
Wait a minute, we can go back on that one. You wiped your hand on the floor?
Well, no, who wants blood on his hand, eh? Horrible stuff. And they might have thought I'd done it. No at all.
And you didn't think that might be a problem?
Does it really matter if I left a few grubby handprints on the floor? They'll get cleaned up in the end, won't they? Don't make such a fuss. That's a message from all of us.
Something wrong, counsel?
No, my lord. I didn't remember anything in the report about a bloody handprint on the floor. That's all.
Don't come at me with all that. You can't intimidate me. I know what I did. I wiped it off on the floor. The blood.
I wonder, could that be what happened? Mr. Naruhodo? I don't have all the answers yet, but I think we may have just uncovered a vital clue.
I was half scared to death.
Hold it!
So you didn't run into the room with your friends?
I'm not that sort of girl.
Sorry?
I'm a timid little thing, me. I was too scared to go in there.
Right, I see.
Oh, Lippy and Witchy ran in there, and then I heard a sort of old lady scream. Well, that wasn't me, I'll swear. If I were a gentleman, I'd stake my honor on it. I wonder what on earth was going on.
Which is when you went to find a policeman.
I ran into a copper as soon as I turned the corner. Oh, I brought him straight back to the place. Didn't I do well, eh? Just between us, that copple's eyes nearly popped out of his head when he saw the Reaper. I've never felt more uncomfortable in all my life.
The defendant was arrested on the spot, I believe.
Considering the catalogue of killings the Reaper had carried out, it was a particularly inauspicious end. Criminy, if I can't find any holes in this testimony, I'm afraid the judge will give a ruling of guilty, Mr. Naruhodo. The truth is, though, their combined testimony is fairly damning. Unfortunately, there don't seem to be any obvious problems with their statements, do there? Still, if Lord Van Zeeks really is innocent, then I'm almost certain that we'll find something in there that doesn't quite add up. You don't think that one of these three could be the true culprit, do you? I don't know, but what I do know is that there's more to this case that has yet to be brought to light. Right, so we're going to go back to where he said this could be an important clue. I slipped and got blood over the floor, wiped it on the floor. Uh-huh.
Objection!
So you wiped off the blood from your hand on the floor of the room. Are you quite sure about that?
Well, what else do you expect me to have done, eh? Does it really matter?
Objection!
Police found no such handprint on the floor during their investigations. What exactly is the defense asserting? If you listen, you'll find out, Prosecutor Asogi. Certainly, there was no bloody handprint found on the floor. What are you trying to say? There was a handprint in blood left very clearly at the scene. On the back of this notice board.
Yes, indeed, indisputably a handprint in the distinctive colour of blood.
Oh, you're dead right. That's my right hand. I'd know it anywhere.
Why is he holding his left hand inside of his overalls? The witness very definitely testified that he wiped his hand on the floor. Any handprints on the back of the board are irrelevant.
Objection!
Not if the board itself had fallen over onto the floor. In that case, it's quite possible for the witness's handprint to have ended up there. Just look at the floor plan of the room. The notice board was in the opposite corner of the room of the victim and in an upright position, even if it had somehow been toppled and was lying on the floor at the time. It would have been a considerable distance from the body.
I fell over when I came across the body. So I was basically right next to the corpse, not on the other side of the room.
In other words, the defense's assertion is contradictory. Yes, it is. There's a very definite contradiction here, for which there must be a reason.
I take it that you formulated a proper hypothesis, counsel, regarding this apparent discrepancy between the witness's account and the handprint found at the scene.
I have, my lord. This discrepancy between the witness's account and the location of the handprint is explained by the board moving. The real contradiction here is the handprint itself, not where it was found. As the court can see, it's upside down.
Good gracious, so it is. If the witness had put his hand against the board, the fingers should be pointing upwards.
What does that tell us? It tells us one simple fact. When this handprint was made, the board must have been lying on the floor as I previously suggested, which means that after the incident, it must have been moved. What? Inconceivable.
Objection!
You're claiming that somebody moved the notice board after the shooting. Then tell the court who. I don't know that yet, but the point is, when you consider all the testimony we've heard so far, we can now be very clear on one point.
And that would be?
The position of the notice board at the time of the incident, my lord.
So, counsel, I must ask you to clarify your assertion for the court. At the time of the incident, where do you maintain the notice board was situated?
Well, it would have to be over here then if he was nearby, getting his hands bloody.
Take that!
This is the only possible location.
Immediately adjacent to the doorway.
If the court would think back to the testimony given by the defendant earlier, he said that when he entered the room, it was dark, and he couldn't see the body.
Why, heck!
If the notice board had been there, the body would have been completely hidden from view, and the light from the candles would have been blocked, making the room appear darker.
Objection!
But the accused also claims that the victim's body simply appeared before him. That's true. Or, in his precise words, just as I picked the firearm up to examine it, the door flew open and I heard a man scream. It was only then that the body of the Inspector Gregson appeared before me.
I don't know about calling it a scream, but he was talking about me and no mistake. 'Cause it was me that kicked the door open.
You look again at the floor plan. Consider what would happen if the door to the room was thrown open with force. That can't. The door struck the notice board, knocking it over, and making the victim's body visible.
Good gracious.
My client has told nothing but the truth. He has simply described what he saw, and I imagine the bang of that thing falling on the ground would have been sounded like the gunshot.
Order! Order! Counsel, how has this not come to light before now?
After the incident, somebody must have righted the board and moved it into the position where the police, myself, and my colleagues saw it when investigating the room.
Witness, what have you to say for yourself?
What? Me, my lord?
You and your fellows were there at the scene before anybody else. It goes without saying that you must know something about the position of the notice board.
Witnesses in the stand will testify again. You will each explain exactly what you did upon arriving at the scene of the crime.
Hey, stop looking over your glasses at me. We'll get the message.
Witness testimony. Again. Okay. It's gone on long enough. We'll end this one here. I'll see you next time.